Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Morning, well, afternoon now, isn't it? Top of the hour, as we're talking about. And welcome to the second episode of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up. Are you there, Ben?
Yes, I am here, Jeremy, just turning on, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. So just a recap about what we're doing on the show. What we're trying to do is look at some of the issues in the London market and get under the skin of some of the roles and the talent and the technology that people are using to drive change. And I'm delighted to say we have a guest today, Emmanuel. Oh, God, I knew I was going to say that wrong. It's because I've just been practicing off camera. I'm going to call you M. Connelly, who's the head of PMO and Innovation Labs, co-founder at BMS Group. And we're going to be chatting to him in around about 10 minutes' time. But before we do that, we've got a couple of items to get through. Ben, as always, I've made you a jingle. So last week we got the Burgess Bolton jingle. This week I made you this. See what you think of this.
Great.
News wrap-up.
I thought it'd be down with the kids.
That's
it's something.
I don't know. Where's that? What genre of music is that? Is that rap?
I don't know what you call it really. It's a bit of a mess, but anyway, so let's move things on. Let's talk about some important admin. So what's been bugging you this week, Ben, on the lockdown?
On the lockdown front, yes, I am getting quite fed up with Zoom calls, as I guess everybody is. My particular bugbear, though, is around not being able to have humor in those meetings. It's so difficult to to run sort of creative, facilitated sessions if you can't get the bit of humor going. The more I've realized this, and the more it's occurred to me, the more it's bugging me, because I just realized how important a bit of light levity is to getting a really good sort of session with people. I'm not saying you have to laugh your heads off, but it just shows how important context is in all of this. And, you don't get the visual cues in Zoom that you do when you're sitting in a meeting, or even, in a kind of pub scenario, which might well happen sometime soon. I'm hoping.
The other thing
so that bugs me.
Is it cuts off. If somebody's speaking like I'm speaking now, and then you to interject with a funny joke, it doesn't let you speak until I've finished speaking, and it just it's very aggravating.
It's the gap, isn't it? And that gap between the joke and then the kind of grimaces around the room, which you can interpret as being, God, did they get that? Was that even half funny, or did they just hate me? I don't know. It's disconcerting. It really is. So yeah, that's what's bugging me.
I'll tell you what's been bugging me this week about lockdown is the assumption in the media that everybody is on furlough, when actually there's a whole lot of us that are working really hard.
Oh God, yeah. I'm
outside of the key worker thing, and that's driving me nuts.
I am desperate to get back to some sort of normality, as I guess everybody is for obvious reasons, but just the hours now are just piling up. My wife is saying, "How get out of your..." Even my daughter, who is saying, "Dad, are you doing 12-hour days again today?" I mean, it's it's just, I don't know why it happens.
It does. Okay, so let's move things on. So word of the week. So each week we've been looking at Londonisms, London terms, and coming up with new definitions for them. I have been intrigued by the Future at Lloyd's, which has been abbreviated to FAL, F-A-L. And I think that is how Northerners describe someone who's fallen over. They fell over.
Right. Yes, I'm a Northerner, so that sort of, it makes sense a little bit. Yeah, your accent's a bit southern though for me. Do you want mine?
Yeah,
Mine's I found the phrase, which I hadn't heard before, horizontal limits.
Yeah.
And I think it's the referring to the inability to touch one's toes.
That's good. I like that. That's excellent. Right, let's move things forward. So let's add the news jingle.
News wrap up.
There we are, news wrap up. So I'll go first with this one. So I was looking at the future at Lloyd's. They sent me an email yesterday, and I thought it was interesting what was being said on that, especially hot off the heels of the London Matters report that we discussed last week. And what was interesting about it was, firstly, that, well, John Neal's razors must have arrived, because 3 weeks ago when he did the McGill interview, he was very beardy, and
I'm glad about that.
Yeah, I was quite worried about it, but anyway, it looked a lot better about it. But he did talk about the need now to embrace digital and change and technology and data, and he actually talked about looking at new business models that I was quite impressed by, because that's thinking, I think, a little bit broader than just the future at Lloyd's initiatives of 3 months ago. So that was good. The other thing that I spotted in the news was, I don't know if anyone saw this, but the man in Poland who was arrested and charged for wrestling a bear in Warsaw Zoo. Amazing, incredible footage. You can Google it, and somebody's filmed it on their phone. Anyway, he got charged and done for that, but he also got charged and done for not wearing a face mask, because in Poland now have to.
That's the most serious offence there, not jumping in and wrestling. No. Quite right too.
Yeah, you got some news?
There wasn't a huge amount of news this week. Not that I noticed, but then I was working very hard all week. But I did notice one that I picked up, which I think is really interesting. I'd like to pick it up as a theme, actually, which is the CII report, which actually is a 29 report, but it was featured in Insurance Age, which is where I saw it. And I did this good article on it, which picked up that report, which is a trust index, basically, that they run in the insurance sector with consumers and SME businesses, and they picked up that trust in insurance was up before the COVID-19 scenario, and that was fine. And so I thought, well, I'll have a look, because I think there's some really interesting things in there. So there were a couple of things that I really noticed, and I think are going to be really different in future. And basically what this report said last year, and has been actually saying for a long time, is that insurers are missing out on a big opportunity around loyalty. And what both consumers want and small, medium enterprises want is basically to be recognized as being loyal customers in some way, shape or form, either by reduced premiums, additional coverage, et cetera, et cetera. And those have been the sort of highlights of that report. But if you look down below, they have a series of measures: loyalty, price, and ease, and confidence. And confidence metrics, I think, are really interesting, because the one that's fifth on there that I've scribbled on, I know what the policy covers and excludes. Now, clearly, that is going to be a massive issue. It is a massive issue. It's going to be a massive issue for all of these businesses. So I think that is going to go, all of those confidence issues are going to go right to the top. And when you look at that sort of data, it should be saying to insurers there's going to be a huge shift, and you're really going to have to watch in terms of how you service, how you message, how you communicate with all of these customers. So I hope actually that they ran this at the end of 2019. I hope I might talk to them about this and sort of ask them through our here now, would they run it again? Would they run a quick one, just post COVID? I know Ian Simons, the head of marketing. I will probably chat to him, but I really think that everybody in the industry would be interested in that, and we would too. So that's interesting. And then there's another thing I did just sort of find underneath, which is something that we've been looking at, which is the issue of gender and difference, and not just gender, but all sorts of diversity when you look at segments of different people and different attitudes. And they picked up something that we've picked up in our research, which is quite a big difference between men and women, particularly on their, if you like, their sensitivity to service. And this is I wonder, I think this may be something to do with almost the sort of macho element of, service in insurance shows you a bit of a soft touch and all that sort of thing. So men are sort of less likely to talk about, wanting better service and things like loyalty and confidence and things. But we're seeing exactly the same patterns of significantly higher demands, if you like, from women around service than the men in the industry. And I think that, again, is an area for us all to start looking at. So that's a really interesting report, actually. I'm going to, I hope I'm going to keep coming back to this and see if we could get some kind of more regular monitoring. Maybe even get the CII on here.
Yeah, could do. Put a call in and see what's what.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move it on. So it's now time to introduce our guest of the week. Em, are you there?
Here I am. Certainly am.
Excellent.
Hello.
Hello, Em.
Hi, Em.
Hello.
Em is head of PMO and Innovation Lab co-founder for BMS. So welcome. We're going to have a bit of a chat now, just to around kind of three or four themes. So kind of just understand a little bit about your background, your role in insurance, how you got into insurance, and then just looking towards the future around talent. And I'm particularly interested in how we're going to change and transform, and what some of the challenges might be.
Brilliant.
So there we are. So let's start with your background. So what did you want to be when you were little?
I don't have a definite answer to that, but I remember changing my mind every so often. So I'm sure I wanted to be a jet pilot at some point, and I wanted to be a doctor at some point. I wanted to be a manager, whatever that meant. I didn't know exactly. So I think, if anything, I always kept changing my mind. I wasn't really sure, but surely I wasn't planning to end up in insurance. That's for sure.
That's okay. Well, we'll come back to that in a second. So how would you describe yourself in 3 words, let's say?
I would say I'm probably a very curious person. So I like to try different things, see what's out there. I'm not afraid to, experiment with new things. That's certainly very true about me. I also like to define myself as a chaos navigator. So if there's something messy, that's where I thrive. Where something which is disorder and you have to put everything in order, try to make a sense of out of a complex and complicated situation. That's probably something which I love doing. And also I think I'm a connector. So I like to, break the silos and bring people from different cultures, different backgrounds together. So yes, probably those 3 things, curiosity, being a chaos navigator, and being a connector.
Cool. So let's bring it into insurance. So you said insurance wasn't your number one choice when you were a small child. So how did you end up in insurance?
So I'll try to keep it short, give you a bit of my story. But I've done every kind of jobs during my studies. I've been a pizza maker, I've been repairing computers, and then at some point I had my own business with a partner. We were doing marketing, interactive objects for marketing events. So imagine a table. You put a bottle of wine on top, and there's a projector underneath and tells you where the wine comes from, all this information about the wine, all these fancy, shiny objects that could be used for marketing events. And then I felt I wanted to start a family, so I wanted a more safer job, and I had a sort of existential crisis, and I completely switched from that creative side into a safer kind of 9-to-5 job. So I did a master's degree in management consulting, and then from there I worked in banking for a couple of years. And then when I was there, we were trying to work with insurers as part of the consulting offering, and I discovered the insurance world. And the reason why I sort of felt it was the good environment for me is because I perceived the fact that insurance is ultimately serving a social purpose. So yes, companies are there to make money and make profit, but ultimately, it's so important for the stability of the economy overall and the market and the social fabric. So that's what pushed me to move to insurance. And it just happened I found a job for an insurance broker, and from there I've done different roles, different countries, worked in technology operations as project program manager, and more recently innovation. So I think a couple of years ago I started thinking, maybe I should try and reconnect myself with that creative side, the 10 years before my creative job with those fancy objects. And that's why I started exploring innovation. And I felt it was something which was really suitable for me because I could do insurance. I knew a bit, but also I could bring back my creative side into my job, into my day-to-day job. And pretty much it.
And just picking up on that kind of creative and then innovation part of the role now. I mean, what do you how would you describe the insurance market challenges in briefly in sort of 3 or 4?
Yeah, I will go with the usual suspects. So clearly there is legacy systems. We can't ignore that. We need to deal with that. And there's a lot of talks about legacy culture, people being resistant to change the way they work. Even if now with COVID, maybe there is a push in a lot of changing the day-to-day ways of working. So, but still there is a bit of a legacy culture. People fearing changes hard. People fear to lose. So that's hard. I think probably the most important challenge is the ecosystem. So as a single company, you can reach a local optimum, but really the benefits for the entire industry comes where different companies can get together. So that's the big challenge is building and sustaining that ecosystem. And it's true that in the London market, I think, is a very close community. So you have here really strong set of relationships between people. That's really helping a lot compared to maybe I'm thinking Italy, where I'm from, and the situation there in the market. So the fact that here in London everyone was actually sitting in the same square mile did really help building that ecosystem. So it's a challenge, but I think the London market is really well placed to tackle that challenge.
That ecosystem is something I've talked about a bit as well, and it can. There was a paper a few years ago, I think, by might have been Accenture. That was their old name, Accenture, talking about how you have to both assess the ecosystem if you're going to make change or innovation happen in a market, but it's also incredibly challenging if that ecosystem isn't right, particularly for things like technological change. Would you kind of agree with that and see that as an issue?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true what you're saying. Yeah, the communities, can be very positive because people get together, but can be close communities, and then it's difficult for you sort of that creates resistance to change. But again, here in the London market, I think I do see a lot of let's call it commingling and interacting. I'm thinking of the Instech London community, for example, or the events like the Dig Network, trying to bring people from different parts of the sector together, and bringing technologists, bringing experts in human science. So getting back to your point, there is a bit of that, but I think again, I see a lot of vibrant things happening in trying to break the silos and bringing people from different parts and different interests together. I think
so you feel positive about that it's
absolutely
it is changing. I get it. I think it's hard to tell. I think it is changing. I think it'll change as we go through now into a different different environment, I guess, which will be forcing us to think about these things much more. But it's interesting. Yeah, really interesting.
And I think it's all the other driver around that is you talk about legacy systems, and your first point. I think some of the technologies that are coming along are just, completely different to what they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, with mammoth projects, multi-million pound, setup costs, 5-year rollouts, blah 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 blah. You can probably give it better examples than I can, but the technology that you can now deal with is a lot lighter and more agile, and you can try things, and I think that really does help with that, both the culture aspect, because if you see that it's a light touch, then you can try things without, the fear of failure comes down a bit, because you're not betting 6 million quid or 10 million or 15 million quid on it working.
Yeah.
So,
I think this is building from a technology trend from other industries, as you were saying, on the agile ways of working, and also, let's call it the lean enterprise, and all the startup world. I think with those people initially threatening and now more becoming partners, I think one of the positives there is they are bringing into the industry a different way of thinking, that both the process on how you to build those things, and also some excitements about creating new stuff. I think it is absolutely positive that the companies which are smaller and lighter, and they go faster, and they come from different mentality, they are coming into the insurance space. They are bringing in a bit of that cultural change which is needed, and showing us in insurance that there's different ways of working which are faster and are needed in these days, where if you want to survive, you need to go super fast.
Yeah. I mean, we've likened it a bit to like surfers waiting for the right waves. When we're doing some research at the moment, talking to lots of underwriters about technology, and everybody's, as Jeremy says, everybody's trying things out, and they've got their own quote and bind systems or whatever, but actually you feel it's beginning to converge on things like risk exchange and other things but how you create that tipping point, and when you get to that, because and my question, there is a question here, don't worry, Jeremy, is what will be the effect on the human beings in the market and all the people, because it seems to me that's a big transformational change when that starts to happen. It's quite disruptive.
Yeah. So I think I think we're talking ecosystem, right? So you do need a critical mass. So I suspect, and that's just pure speculation from my side, but I suspect what will happen is those new players will bring in the new culture and ways of working, and will show that digitalization is possible, it's achievable, and then you will have bigger players coming in and either partner with those or setting up their own ventures, trying to streamline the process along the value chain. And you quoted at the start the Fisher & Lloyds as a wonderful example, where they are working in an agile way, consultative way, client-centric, but they have the size to really make that kind of change, but they're using that kind of culture and mentality of agility that's coming from the insurer world. And in terms of this human side of it, how this is going to change, I think it's hard, but it's inevitable. There's this clear forces and pushes towards the digitalization, digital transformation. There's no escape from it. So we cannot put our head in the sand. You can either embrace it or push against it, but
or retire.
It is happening. It's a question around.
Embrace it or retire.
Yeah.
So let's just explore your role a little bit. So what's your job? How would you describe your job to someone who didn't work in insurance?
So what I'm doing at the moment in the innovation space is really three things. we are trying to collect the best ideas across the company and then execute on those ideas. That's the first pillar, and there's a lot on around the governance of that process, how you select the best ideas. That's the first bit. Also, we are trying to help and shape the culture of the company, bringing in innovation as a way for everyone to think. So I think when we founded the Innovation Lab, one of the things we always said is, ultimately our goal is to disappear. There shouldn't be an innovation lab. Everyone should be responsible for innovation. So a lot of what we do is teaching people what innovation is, some tools and technologies, giving them some knowledge around what are the new trends, bringing in experts on different topics. So giving them a toolkit around innovation. We also show that innovation is possible. I'm really lucky to work for a company that there's a big push from the top about innovation. So that is massively helping driving that push and changing that culture and making people aware. Innovation is everyone's responsibility. And finally, the third bit is the networking aspect. So we were talking about ecosystems. We are trying to build a lot of relationships with our peers in the market, other innovation labs, and people that have the same processes, people that think alike. They can work really well together. And that's I do see this trend where innovation labs from different companies getting together to do open innovation across companies. So it's three things: the pushing of the ideas and innovation projects, the cultural aspect, and then the networking ecosystem.
So as you describe it, it's a hugely kind of people-focused job, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas actually, if people just read your role, they might think, well, he's kind of fiddling around with technology and software and stuff like that, which you probably are, but actually it's really about the people. Yeah.
Yes. And innovation is, there's the first seed of change management, and there is a lot of change related aspects to it, right? The fear. And I think one of the biggest challenges is you have, probably we got, hundreds of ideas, and then not all of them are great idea. And some of them, you don't know if they're great or not. So you try them and accept failure. I think that's a big cultural shift there there are things that might not be successful, and you need to accept that, because then out of that 100 you have, there will be 2 or 3 which are extremely successful. Will pay off for the rest, which didn't go well. But there is that psychological component of accepting failure in some areas, because people can be more successful in some certain areas. It is really tricky for people to understand.
And that's quite. I find that I think it is quite difficult in insurance, because culturally they don't like talking about failure. So that is I think that's quite a big sort of resistance point, I suppose. I find that with the work that we do as well. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
And then, but you don't have to get into the vicious loop of which can just fail. No, so you still need to aim here for being successful, but just be ready to accept some failures along the way.
Yeah. Great.
That's really
good thing.
Change.
I lost you for a second, James.
Oh, lost connection.
Oh, it's all right. So I'll ask the final question, while Jeremy's coming back on. What I'd be interested to know, I'm just doing the final question, Jeremy, so we keep it moving. So you've come into the industry, you've come in from I suppose a tangential point, you might say, not a conventional point. Good industry to join now for young people?
Yes. It's from outside, so there's this perception of insurance is boring, but I found it really interesting. There's so many interesting challenges to solve, and again, for me, the big push was the social purpose. So the fact that you are working in a space where you are still contributing to the society. I think that's really it was a big driver for me, and especially now, I think it's really exciting. There's a lot happening. There's a big push towards changing the way are working, and there's new risks coming our way every day. Very simple to to quote pandemic, but also climate change. There is a lot to be done there, and again with the ultimate goal of servicing the stability of the society. So for me, it is a very exciting role, and I see myself staying in the industry for for the next few years because there is so much to do there. So
well, you came to, as you said, you were a chaos navigator. I think you definitely came to the right place in insurance.
Indeed.
No, we're not on that basis. We're not going to be short of work, are we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, again, I love chaos. So it's good environment at the moment.
Yeah.
Great
Brilliant.
stuff. Well, thanks ever so much for coming on and sharing your story and insights into your role, and you're moving to Milan. So
yes, correct. Yes,
all the best with the move over to back to Italy, I suppose. But I guess we'll see you around London as well from time to time.
Yes, I talked a lot about you because it's being part of the community. So I will stay involved in all the communities I'm part of right now. So you will still see me around.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you.
We'll get you back on, Em. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Good fun.
Great. Gets a kids cheer. That. Right. We'll wrap things up with the weekend activities. Ben, have you got anything on this weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to, very exciting. I'm going to Eastbourne to see my parents for the first time in 8 weeks. So socially distanced, tiptoe around Rose Garden somewhere in Eastbourne. That's my highlight of my weekend.
Excellent. I'm water skiing on Windermere. I'm breaking all the rules. So
yeah, water skiing. Okay. You're driving all that way. You're not allowed to do that, are you?
No, yeah, only if you're testing your eyes. But
okay, that's fine then. Good. Yeah, that's great.
Great. Good speech again. Thank you, Ben. You get kids cheer as well. Thanks for everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Cheers. Bye, Jeremy. Have a great weekend all. Bye.
Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.